All right, welcome back to another episode of the Jet Take, a sound biteless and collarless version of the podcast. We're recording this
A
on
good way.
Zoom. In a good way. We're recording this a little different time. Kyle and I both had some conflicts, so we're not doing callers, so we're not using our old software. So we figured we might as well use a software that would give us a little higher quality of voice if we're not going to use callers. So Kyle,
Yeah.
let's talk about the Jets' win over the Broncos this past week.
Okay.
Obviously, a much-needed win
Yeah.
for the New York Jets, Sam Darnold, and specifically Todd Bowles. A lot to talk about, so I guess I'll swing it over to you in a second. But first, we'll do some plugs. You can follow us on Twitter at the Jet Take. That's the best place to follow us. If you want to keep up with our show, we tweet Jets all the time there, so make sure you follow us at the Jet Take on Twitter. If you want to listen to our show, just search up the Jet Take anywhere you listen to podcasts: iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, whatever. But, of course, you can find us on turnonthejets.com, the best place to go for Jets coverage. All right. So without further ado, Kyle, I'll kick it over to you first to get your just overall broad try to keep this short because we're going to jump into a lot of topics. But I want, kind of just short summary, your thoughts on the game.
Good game from literally everybody. Big props to the coaching staff. I'm very hard on them consistently throughout, the offseason and on the show. Throughout this season and basically everywhere. I ridicule the coaches. I say they don't deserve to have jobs, and I still think that's true to some point, or at least their current positions. But good team win overall. Defense played well. Offense played well. We got it to our playmakers, specifically Robbie Anderson. The offensive line held up against, quote-unquote, one of the best pass rushers in the NFL, and just a good game.
I love you use quote unquote, but I can recall last year you called Von Miller the greatest pass rusher of all time.
Yeah, no, he is in my mind.
So why'd you use quote unquote?
The best pass rush defense because they drafted Bradley Chubb, Shane Ray.
You said pass rusher.
I said pass rushing defense.
Kyle, I'm in a petty mood. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You don't have Bryce Petty anymore, so I have to make up for it. That was a terrible joke. We're off to a horrible start. That's what happens when you take 2 weeks off. All right, let's talk. We're very fair weather podcasters. I guess we only podcast when they win. But let's talk about – that's not true. I promise that's not true, but I guess
very true.
Looking at our last episodes, it could be. All right, we recorded an episode. It just sometimes we both lazy. And 2 weeks ago is my fault. I'll take credit. The blame.
The blame, not credit.
Not credit, yeah. Negative credit. Okay, Sorry. Let's take this back. Talk about Jets versus Broncos. Yeah, you mentioned Robbie Anderson. You mentioned an all-around solid performance, but I think there's one player in one area that the Jets thoroughly dominated, and that's the trenches. But more specifically, we're going to talk about the trenches. We're going to talk about Robbie Anderson, but I want to get your thoughts. Isaiah Crowell and Bilal Powell also had a nice day. The Jets' run game was on fire, over 300 yards of offense on the ground, 500 yards, I believe, total. So the Jets did a really good job on offense, but specifically that ground game really opened things up for that offense, for Sam Darnold, for a guy like Robbie Anderson, who's a deep threat. You saw a lot of times where the Broncos were just having one safety high and putting an extra man in the box. It didn't stop Crowell, and that opened stuff up for the Jets' passing offense. But talking about Crowell and his performance and including Powell, Kyle, what did that do for Sam Darnold and the Jets?
It looked like Crowell had a freshness to him. It must be the dude wipes, obviously. Just the way he was running, and I think it all starts, like you said, in the trenches with the offensive line. There were gaps that me and you could have ran through and got like 70 yards. It was just a dominant performance of the offensive line. And
I've seen you run in videos. I don't know, 70 yards.
Where have you seen me run in videos?
I think you sent me a video of you playing basketball or something. I've seen you. Kyle, you
not a chance.
70 yards on an NFL defense.
It was like that wasn't meant to be taken literal.
I told you, I'm very petty today, Kyle. Walk on eggshells. Okay, continue. Sorry, I cut you off for a very useless purpose.
Yeah, clearly. Crowell did a good job finding those holes and using them, and the offensive line did a great job blocking downfield. The wide receivers had a really good game blocking downfield. Shout out to my boy, best wide receiver on the team, Terrell Pryor, making a key block on that big Crowell touchdown.
So stupid.
Tight ends did a really good job blocking the whole day. It started in the trenches, basically, and Crowell and Bilal Powell. I think Powell actually ended up with 99 yards, so we can't say we had 200-yard rushers. But the sentiment is there that we had 200-yard rushers and dominated on the ground.
Yeah, so we talked about heading into the season that the Jets were going to try to use a running back by committee approach, and they really did. I mean, Isaiah Crowell had the dominant, performance, but he only had 15 carries. Powell had 20. Powell had 5 more carries than he did. He was pretty, down the middle, but I mean, leaning towards Powell. They both were very productive, and I think that's what you're going to see as we move, further and further into the season. I think Todd Bowles and this Jets coaching staff might have finally used how to use running backs in the NFL, and specifically a guy like Bilal Powell and a power running back like Isaiah Crowell. You saw in 2015 when they had Chris Ivory and Bilal Powell. Ivory dominated similarly to how Crowell kind of dominated this game, in the early weeks, but he would just the tread would wear his style of running a power running back. It just doesn't last the whole season. That you mentioned that energy, that burst he came into, and whether you attribute it or not to the man wipes, but that's going to wear.
Nope, say it right, Ben.
What did I say?
You said man wipes.
What is it?
Dude wipes.
Dude wipes. Sorry.
By the way, why was everybody upset about that?
I don't understand because it didn't even affect the game whatsoever.
Yeah.
The ball went to the 25 anyways.
Zero effect on the game. Zero.
Yeah. I don't know. I think people were just trying to find a escape.
Something to be mad at.
Bowles doesn't have control of the locker room type of thing. But anyways,
it was Bowles that was angry. I mean, he was like, yeah, we had a stern discussion. He won't be doing that. Shut up, Todd Bowles.
No. Yeah, well, he was trying to show that he does have control of the locker room, and then people were getting on him even more because, why he should be benched, and was it Brian Costello or somebody wrote an article that was essentially like, he needs to bench him, and then of course this weekend Isaiah Crowell goes off. But anyways, my point about the distribution of running back carries. I mean, 20 to 15 favoring Powell. Powell's finally getting more involved. And then Isaiah Crowell is getting a slightly less share, but you saw how much more dominant he was. If Crowell was to have 25 carries, sure, he might have had more yards by math, but he wouldn't have been nearly as effective and wouldn't have been nearly as effective in the coming weeks. So we're keeping Crowell fresh, and Powell is getting involved. And so I was very excited with how Stump Mitchell and Jeremy Bates and even Todd Bowles to an extent kind of diced up the running back carries. It'll be even more interesting to see when Elijah McGuire comes back, who you figure has to be coming back at some point soon because it was
week 8 or week 9, right? That's when he's eligible.
Yeah, he's on there. Well, I hope he'll come back week 8 in the IR, but you have to figure that his recovery, he's got to be nearly fully recovered because it was a 6 to 8 week injury and it started like the start of training camp. So he's got to be, pretty much full healthy at this point. But it'll be interesting to see how he gets involved because he was a guy I really liked. Maybe he'll take, some of Bilal's carries. So then Bilal's a little more fresh as we get towards the end of the season. We talked about the offensive line. I mean, this was our biggest, concern at the beginning of the year. Offensive line on offense and edge rusher on defense, and both, getting pressure on the quarterback and protecting the quarterback. Both units actually played pretty well on Sunday. I was really worried about this offensive line after the past few weeks and what we saw. And while I still don't think they're an amazing offensive line, they at least showed that they could protect Sam. And we saw, Kyle, that when Sam Darnold had time, he plays well.
Breaking, the consensus number 1 quarterback throughout the NFL as well with no pressure in his face. I'm thoroughly shocked by that.
Yeah, no, I just think I think that the offensive line and the defensive line, so the trenches were the key to this game. Well, guys like Robbie Anderson had good games. Sam Darnold played really well. Isaiah Crowell and whatnot. And I don't know what you're about to say, but I assume you're about to say, which is true for most games. I mean, the Jets kept Sam Darnold upright, and he had time to go through his reads and find guys. They allowed Isaiah Crowell and Bilal Powell to run all over the defense, which opened up the playbooks. And then the defensive side, a guy we're going to talk about in just a minute, Leonard Williams dominated. Really, all the defensive linemen dominated. Henry Anderson played really well as well. Again, the edge rushers were getting after it. So the trenches is dominating the trenches. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
which is the saying.
Exactly. I mean, you win game in the trenches. They controlled the game. They controlled field position. It was really an all-out impressive performance by 2 units that I was somewhat concerned about. Now, talking about – we'll stick with the offense for a little bit more, and then we're going to switch sides to the defense. We know everybody likes talking about the offense, so we'll pander to our crowds. We are sellouts here at the Jet Take.
Yeah.
Jeremy Bates was another guy that I was slightly concerned about after a few weeks. I mean, really starting with that Cleveland game. I mean, I was just like, they're not letting Darnold rip it. His play calling was a little anemic. I was concerned about him as an offensive coordinator. While John Morton wasn't an amazing offensive coordinator by any stretch, he did get a career year out of Josh McCown. He got he had some creative schemes that, were the Jets were able to beat, the league's best defense, the Jaguars last year. So he did some good things. So I was worried, okay, so we fired John Morton for this guy. Essentially, Jeremy Bates looked like a guy who took 6 years off of football, through weeks 2
Did you just steal my quote?
I mean, that was not your quote. People had been saying that he looks exactly like.
I've been saying that for like the past month, but okay.
Okay, well, then you're a part of the majority. Anyways, Kyle, about Bates' play calling, what were your thoughts on it? I think people were getting concerned, specifically after that Jacksonville game, that he just had no answer. I mean, it almost looked like somebody calling Madden. I mean, it was like one thing worked, and it was the bubble screen to Nunwa, and that was all he felt comfortable running.
Yeah.
And he couldn't try anything else. He wasn't letting Darnold rip it or anything. This game was a much different story. He established himself. And again, it goes back to the trenches. Sam Darnold had more time, and the running lanes were open. But how did you feel he called the game in this game against the Broncos?
I think this game specifically was obviously pretty good play calling wise. I think I'll say this: play calling wise, it's probably an average play. There was nothing that really wowed my mind on how bold it was or anything. I think the quarterback sneak was probably his best specific call. I think more offensive coordinators are starting to get more and more credit for what their players do. Look out in Kansas City, obviously Tyreek Hill, great player, capable of doing many things. When he jukes out 3 guys, a lot of the times Andy Reid and the offensive coordinator, get their hand shook and say, oh, that was a great play call. Nope, that's your best players making plays. So I'll say it was an average play calling game. Nothing wowed me. I think people executed what they had to do, like their roles, and that's what made the plays more successful. And really, after you call like a draw or something, which is primarily how Crow got most of his yards on the couple big runs. I think it was a draw to the left on both of those big runs. It's not play calling after that. It's just, all right, whatever play call is, basically draw left, pull a certain way. And you can't give that credit to Bates. You give that to the execution on the offensive line and maybe the quarterback if it's a read option there. But after the play is called, there's no credit to be given on running plays, and that was the dominant part. So I'll say it's an average play calling day for Jeremy Bates. But we won the game, and we put up points, which is what matters.
Yeah, I think I agree with you to a certain extent. But I will say I think the progress that we saw from last week to this week was substantial.
Certainly better.
I agree that the running game and the trenches definitely opened up the playbook for him, that he got more comfortable. And we still have yet to see Jeremy Bates really, in any performance to date, and hopefully at some point we'll start to see this. And I guess you could make the argument that we haven't really seen it from any Todd Bowles team, but how does he adjust? How does he go into halftime when, the Jets are getting shut out or their just offense isn't working at all, and he's able to adapt and call a game plan to beat the defense? I don't want to say he got lucky because, a lot of it was execution, but the Jets coaches did their job this week, getting him back on track after, 3 straight weeks of losing, especially a really disparaging effort against the Jaguars. So I don't want to take away credit from them. Probably the biggest thing that I think he did is he opened up the playbook for other receivers.
Yep. And
he let Darnold rip it more, which was big. He let Darnold throw it downfield. He got Robbie Anderson involved. And what Robbie did is that's like what Robbie Anderson.
That's Robbie's role.
3-4 catches, 1 or 2 of them could be big, long touchdowns. The other ones could be comeback routes or whatever. That's all Robbie has to do. In other cases, when they're on the goal line, I guess you can use them in that. They tried it once. It didn't really work, where they motion him and then they throw really quickly to him in the flat. But Jeremy Bates did a good job getting creative with him, trying to get guys like Kearse involved, trying to get the tight ends involved. And I think the other thing he really did well was using the 2 tight end sets, basically max protecting for Sam Darnold, giving him extra time. That was really creative and a good job by Jeremy Bates responding. All right, talking about the defense, I guess a nice segue. We're talking about play calling the offense. Let's talk about play calling on the defensive side of things. Todd Bowles calling the defensive plays in place of Casey Rogers. Our thoughts go out to him. But on a football side of things, Todd Bowles did a really good job calling defensive plays. He was a very good and top defensive coordinator for the Cardinals. He hasn't really called the plays here in New York. Obviously he oversees the defense, so it's not like he has had no impact on it. But I thought he called a really, really good game against the Broncos.
He is one of the better assistant coaches in the NFL. That is his bread and butter, calling defenses. And you can't say, and I've said this before in previous episodes, that he doesn't have the specific guys he wants. I know he didn't have Tremaine Johnson this game, but in general, he has guys Buster went out in what, the third?
Buster went out early, I thought. No, yeah, Buster went out early. Perry Nickerson was playing very early on.
I thought he went out like mid-game.
I'll look at defense. Hold on.
All right.
I mean, I don't know if we're gonna be able to. You keep
Yeah,
talking.
you might be able to find it in like an ESPN box score, but anyway, he was very creative with the stunts and stuff. We saw Leonard Williams on 2 delayed blitz. One got home, the other one got pressure. We didn't see as many of those nickel blitzes that we usually see when Casey Rogers is calling the defense. I think we saw 2, one with Perry Nickerson and one with Buster early.
Well, part of that could be due to not having Buster Screen, who's their best blitzing player.
Well, we've been seeing it with Jamal Adams quite frequently. We saw it probably like 5 or 6 times in the Jags game. So they have multiple guys who can do it. But I think just the play calling overall was fantastic from Todd Bowles. It was an A-plus game for him. The secondary, even being down, going into it, knowing they didn't have their number one corner, Mo Claiborne went into the number one role, shut the guys down. I mean, he was arguably the best defensive player all week in the NFL just based off his, performance. And then Perry Nickerson stepped up when Buster Screen went down. And Marcus May had a phenomenal game on top of it, too, right there on the back end. I do think he gave up a touchdown. I think it was more just a lost in coverage thing, though. Not necessarily a one-on-one beat in the back of the end zone. I think I forget who got the touchdown.
Cortland Sutton.
Oh, Cortland Sutton. Okay, I mean, he should have been a first-round pick. I think he ended up being in the second or third. But he's a talented receiver. But Marcus May looked very well. I think 7 tackles, 2 passes defended, and that obviously the 1 interception at the end of the game, which I honestly didn't think he should have scored just as like a class thing. Last play of the game's done. But I guess he actually like cramped up really bad or something. But just a great, great game from Todd Bowles. He pitched literally a perfect defense, just as you want it. Used Adams and May perfectly in coverage. Knew exactly what Mo's strengths were. So, when he knew that Mo was going to get burned just away, if you go back and watch it, we saw Marcus May going to single high. I think I counted 3 or 4 times specifically to help out Mo. It was just really good defensive play calling and then defensive, guys talking on the field, acknowledging what's going on. There weren't a lot of plays where the Jets got beat. I think there was that one long touchdown. Who got beat on that one?
Darryl Roberts. Yeah, towards the end of the game. And Roberts actually didn't have terrible coverage. I mean, he went.
No, it was a great throw.
Yeah, it was a great catch by. It was more of a great catch by Demaryius Thomas. Just had strong hands and held on to it, even though Roberts swats it down.
Yeah, and Demaryius Thomas, who is a shadow of what he used to be, but is still a legitimate number 1 receiver. I think Todd Bowles knew exactly what Case Keenum and this Denver offense was going to be. A lackluster game for them the previous week. They lost, I think, in KC in the 4th quarter. I know it was a late game, pretty close down to it. So, they were a little off their horse, to say the least. They were upset with how that game went. And then Case Keenum statistically in outside fields where it's windy, which happens to be MetLife's big advantage for the Jets. He's horrible in those scenarios. If you look at his record in outside dome, like outside of dome games, he's pathetic. He's one of the worst quarterbacks in NFL history when it comes down to that. But when he plays in a dome, Minnesota Vikings, I think they're US Bank Stadium or something. And then he had other times in domes. I think it was Detroit. But those are his best career years. So the defense was fantastic from Todd Bowles. I don't know exactly what's going on with Casey Rogers, so I'm not going to say anything. But it was better than what we usually have.
Yeah, it certainly was. And while I was impressed with the offense, I was probably more impressed with the defense. Yeah, Bowles did a really great job just calling the plays. He's been really creative with the blitzes, which I've been happy about because while the Jets don't have an edge rusher, they haven't had an edge rusher in a long time. And I think they haven't been as creative, in 2015, 2016, 2017. It always felt like it was just kind of the same basic kind of blitzes. This year, Bowles has gone deep into his bag. I mean, you'll see Adams line up as a linebacker. I've seen Leonard Williams stand up. I mean, we've seen a lot of different looks, different guys out there, a big rotation at edge rusher too. So I think that's helped. I think Bowles has just gotten really creative with it, and he did a terrific job calling. And as you mentioned, not only did the trenches play well for the Jets, but the secondary, considering they're down 2 starting corners, played very well. The safeties looked really good, and Morris Claiborne is playing like a number 1 corner. Perry Nickerson is getting better. He certainly is fast, and he certainly has the speed to catch up and stuff. But he gave up a few a few plays early on. But yeah, I'm impressed with him coming along as a 6th-round draft pick. So overall, a terrific performance of the Jets, and we can't finish recapping without talking about the special teams. Lack Edwards hasn't been talked about really at all this season, but he's had a terrific year. Fingers crossed, knock on wood.
Field position, we've lost field position.
Yeah, but not because of him. Not because of him.
There was a couple bad punts in that Jaguars game.
I mean, yeah, I think he had 1 or 2. And
that's a couple.
I can recall one bad punt this season, and that was in the Jags game. And I'm not saying there weren't other ones, but as far as the ones I'm sure there was one like the Dolphins game or something. But as far as I'll say this, I can remember a lot of great punts. And we're talking about this game, so if we keep it to this game, I mean, think of how many times he just had a booming punt. He pinned him inside the 5, I think, multiple times. I mean, Lack Edwards did a good job on Sunday, and has done a good job for the most of the season. I mean, unless I'm missing something, I guess this is where we need Michael Nanny in this charting to back me up. But I'm pretty sure, at the very least, I can say this: he's steadily improved in his 3 years, and he's it's at the point where we're not thinking a punter as a need. Fingers crossed. Jason Myers obviously missed that early field goal, but rebounded nicely and then made a few others. And obviously Andre Roberts, who's leading the league in punt return yards per average yards per return. He was probably one of Mac's best offseason signings. So terrific, game, all 3 phases, and then I guess including coaches. Really good game, and finally the team from Detroit decided to show up again. We talked a little bit about Andre Roberts being a Mac offseason signing. I think we'll talk a little bit about some top subjects here, then we'll preview the game against the Colts, and we'll get out of here. But Kyle, I mean, your thoughts on McCagnon's free agent signings from this past season, how they performed, over a quarter of the season. Obviously the past month hasn't treated the Jets, amazingly, given that they lost, now they're 2-3, but they lost 3 games in a row and whatnot. And after this game, there was a few puff pieces, I guess, talking about the amazing offseason that McCagnon had, talking about all his additions. But I think credit is due where credit's due. Andre Roberts is playing kind of the bargain bin signings. We'll talk about Tremaine in a second, but Andre Roberts is certainly, having a big impact. Henry Anderson, who was a trade, but still an offseason acquisition, is arguably one of his best moves. You can talk about Brandon Copeland, Isaiah Crowell dominating this game. So a lot of kind of the under-the-radar McCagnon moves performing really well for the Jets. And, I mean, that's the biggest thing about free agency is oftentimes you see the teams that win a Super Bowl aren't the teams that go out and sign, the guy for $80 million. It's these type of signings, these kind of core key role player signings that really carry a team far. And I think that's one of McCagnon's strengths as GM. He has a lot of weaknesses. I am not in love with his day 2 or 3 drafting, among some other things. And obviously Tremaine has been up and down and whatnot. But his, ability to find role players on the free agent market, I think has been pretty key, and specifically this past offseason.
Yeah, I'm probably going to forget a couple guys in this, but we'll start with the obvious. We'll just go through the offense. Isaiah Crowell, I think he's been a solid signing. He's a good running back. I think Cleveland is missing him dearly right now as we see them struggling with Carlos Hyde being their lead back. I know my pod father and friend of the podcast, Jeff Lloyd, consistently makes the argument that the Browns should have made more effort to keep Isaiah Crowell, but it looks like Crowell wanted out of there, and I don't necessarily blame him. So that's a good signing by Mike McCagnon, and barring any future repercussions we have with Isaiah Crowell. Offensive line, Spencer Long, I think has done a phenomenal job, right there in the middle. We saw a couple high snaps this game, which I don't know what was going on there. There was a couple injuries that we weren't even aware of. Quincy Enunwa was straight injured, wearing a finger cast apparently. And I didn't read anything about that all week. I didn't even see him on the injury report. So I don't know. Maybe there's more to that. Maybe the ball just slipped, whatever. A couple bad snaps is not going to deter what I think is Spencer Long. I think him and Brian Winters have made a really nice tandem there, stopping a lot of stunts we saw in the Jacksonville game. As bad as that game got quickly, the offensive line I don't think was really to blame in that game. I know they had some mishaps with, Kelvin Beachum, but the offensive line overall in that game played well. And I think it starts with the guy in the middle and Spencer Long, who's been the best center we have since 2012, 2013 Nick Mangold, because, basically after 2014, Nick Mangold was at best. Terrell Pryor on offense. 1 touchdown, I think, to his name right now. Hasn't got a lot of playing time. I think that's yet to be decided. I think we'll see more as the season goes on and if he gets more snaps. I think we saw him play 2 or 3 snaps, and 2 out of the 3 of those snaps were fantastic from him. So I imagine he's going to get more playing time as time goes on. He just has to remain being a good teammate. Obviously, the rumors are circulating that he's not the greatest teammate in the locker room, which is sad to hear from my point of view. But I hope that he gets more snaps because he is a phenomenal athlete and can make phenomenal catches, as we can see. Anybody I'm forgetting on offense?
No, I think you're. Well, I think you've covered the question fairly well. I agree. I think that was just kind of the main point. He did a good job role players, and I agree with you on Terrell Pryor. Our only disagreement about Terrell Pryor is you've called him repeatedly the Jets' best wide receiver, which is just patently false and frankly idiotic.
By far.
It's just idiotic, and you know it, and you're just doing it to be funny, which is fine. But just so our listeners know that you're not a complete idiot. I mean, you are in a lot of senses, but just so you know, he's doing this to be funny. But I agree that Terrell Pryor was a good signing. I wanted the Jets to sign him. I think he's a terrific 4th wide receiver. That's the type of guy you want. Kind of an athletic freak, can do some things. Not a guy who you're comfortable sliding in. Not a guy you want starting week in and week out on the outside, in my opinion. But I think a guy who can, is going to catch a few touchdowns this year, have a few cool catches, and provide solid depth for the Jets. Yeah, he had an awesome catch that one-handed with Sam Darnold. But obviously, any day I'd take Quincy and Robbie Anderson, and probably Jermaine Kearse as well. Definitely Jermaine Kearse as well. I think Jermaine Kearse is younger too. I'm pretty sure, at least the same age. I think Mac has done. I'm a little back and forth on Mac. I think that he's done a lot of good things, like these role players. Obviously, Sam Darnold and that trade. Sam's playing pretty well. Honestly, as far as what we expected, I think he's right on track to be a good quarterback. And obviously, as the Jets know, probably better than anybody, besides the Cleveland Browns, franchise quarterbacks are not easy to find. They're very rare, and the Jets potentially, I don't want to jinx anything, it's only been 5 games, look like they could be on the right track to have found theirs. But Kyle, we talked about, obviously this isn't the end of the season. I knew that Bowles and, obviously Mac are going to get the full season of 16. They got the extension. They're going to get their 16 games. But obviously after last week, there was a large brigade of the fire Bowles and to a larger extent fire Mac. I kind of want to get your thoughts on this. Has your opinion changed? Obviously it shouldn't change after 1 week, because the biggest thing for the Jets is that they haven't been able to string back-to-back wins together since this time last year. It's been a long time. And honestly, I feel good about this team, and I'm glad we got to see another peek at the team that showed up against Detroit and hopefully the team that we'll see in future years. But my opinion about 2018 isn't really going to change until I see, games strung together and where the Jets look competent week in and week out. But we'll start with Bowles, and quickly, just kind of, does this change anything at all for your Fire Bowles, poster?
No, we got to flush the bowels. We got to clear them all out.
Oh, there we go. That was good.
Thank you.
I'm glad it only took us 2 years to think of that. Wow.
Yeah. The end of the year, I think he's got to go. He's just not the guy. He's not a good head coach. Unfortunately, and it's like holding public office. You have to be able to shake hands and kiss babies while doing economic things at the same time. Todd Bowles can scheme up a defense for you all day, and we see that he's very capable of, doing a great job as a defensive coordinator. But at the same time, as a head coach, time management, player development, player usage, knowing when to step into things, knowing when to not step into things, these are things that he struggles with. And I think that all comes with being a leader. And, a lot of the guys in the locker room support Todd Bowles, or at least they do in the media. But at some point, when you keep losing and losing and losing, guys like Leonard Williams, guys like Jamal Adams, guys like James Carpenter, Brian Winters, who have been there for the majority of the Bulls' tenure, or have that mentality of not wanting to lose in Jamal Adams' case, will get sick of losing. And eventually the locker room, he'll lose it. It's just a matter of time, because nobody likes to lose in the NFL. Yeah,
you don't want to fall into – and I actually agree with you on Bulls. I actually agree with you on this issue. But I will say that if the Jets go 7-9, 8-8, miss the playoffs, but Darnold continues to show improvement, he's probably going to stay. You're probably looking at another year of Bulls, which is frankly disappointing, because I agree. he's clearly at this point, I mean, it's been 4 years, not the guy. I don't – and look, I'll give him – he has the rest of the season to prove that he is the guy. But, I mean, we don't want to fall into another situation like the Bengals with Marvin Lewis where we're just –
mediocre for you.
Yeah, just around mediocrity. And I'm trying to remember who wrote the article, but basically that the Jets don't want to have Sam Darnold be the next Andrew Luck. We don't want to waste these prime years of Sam Darnold. These 5 years where Sam's on his rookie contract, so we have a lot of cap to add other pieces. These are integral. The Jets could, theoretically could and should win a Super Bowl in these 5 years. I mean, you look at the Seahawks, you look at the Eagles. This is the time those young up-and-coming teams do it, and then hopefully they have long, sustaining success. But yeah, you're obviously worried about the Jets falling into that pit of mediocrity with Todd Bowles at the helm. So I agree with you. I think that unless he shows us over these next 11 games, 10 games, whatever's left on the slate, 10 games, and potentially playoffs. That he's the guy, I think you have to move on. I think you have to move on and hire an offensive coach, and every move has to be made for the future of Darnold. And so, yeah. Now, as far as Maccagnan goes, he's a guy that has actually done a fairly okay job. He hasn't knocked out of the park. You can look at some of his draft picks. Then I even mentioned this week, I mean, we talked about Nathan Shepard. I'm not trying to be a downer here. But has he done anything this season? And look, he's a defensive lineman, and he's a rookie, so he gets a benefit of the doubt. But that's the problem with taking a 24 or 25-year-old rookie is that, the longer it takes for him to get the swing of things, the less time you have with him in his prime. But what are your thoughts on Maccagnan? Do you think he's a guy that the Jets should – I mean, obviously the Jets have the rest of this year, but for the most part, Maccagnan's job is – for this team is theoretically done. It's just kind of how they perform. Do you think Maccagnan is a guy that – we agree that Bowles should be fired, but do you think Maccagnan's a guy who should continue to stay with the Jets while they bring in their next head coach? Or, and this is a thought that has kind of popped up in recent weeks, and I was in favor of it, and I still am in favor of it, promoting, and I don't want to, mess up his last name, but Hermandinger or whatever his name, the Jets.
Brian Hermandinger.
Yeah, I know it's Brian, but he's 32 years old, young guy, the guy behind the trade up for Sam Darnold. There's a report that John Gruden's kind of looking at him to be his next GM. Rest in peace. I guess Brian Hermandinger, if he goes out to Oakland Las Vegas with John Gruden. But there's some that think, even if Maccagnan's done probably a B- job here in New York. He inherited a tough situation, but you could trade in that B-, and as we talked about, the Jets have to be aiming to win Super Bowls. Trade that in, on obviously trade Bowles in. Promote Hermandinger, who's a guy who many believe around the league that he's kind of this up and coming, this new. The Jets kind of have a golden egg. Promote him, and then go find your offensive coach and let him run things and whatnot. What are your thoughts on the front office side of things? Because we obviously agree on the coaching side of things.
I think everybody knows by now. I'm a Mike Maccagnan guy. I always have been. I think he has done a phenomenal job. I mean, you look at the roster, and I'll just quickly run down it. Let's talk about the Playmakers. God, I can't speak sometimes. Robbie Anderson, undrafted free agent, found by Mike Maccagnan and company. Quincy Nunwa, close to being extended by Mike Maccagnan and company. That was brought in by he was in the NCAA 12. Jermaine Kearse, phenomenal trade to acquire him. Second-round pick that eventually got us a franchise quarterback. Kelvin Beachum, brought in by Maccagnan. James Carpenter, brought in by Maccagnan. Spencer Long, brought in. Brian Winters extended. Brandon Shell, fifth-round pick in 2016, starting right tackle for the past 2.5 years. Obviously, Sam Darnold, franchise quarterback, that's a big piece there. Isaiah Crowell, and I think Bilal Powell was also given an extension at the beginning of Maccagnan's tenure, right? Am I wrong?
Yeah, after 2015.
Yeah, okay. Both of our main running backs brought in by Maccagnan. On defense, Leonard Williams, his first pick. Pro Bowler, I think he'll be a Pro Bowler again this year. So far, he's been having a phenomenal year. Steve McLennan, honestly, the most underrated guy in this roster, might have the biggest impact on his defense consistently every play. If he gets pressure or, if he just even creates a disruption, it's usually good for the defense. I mean, usually a good play comes out of it. Henry Anderson, I think he's currently leading the team in sacks, brought in for 6th or 7th round pick from Indy just because they heat him. 7th round pick. I mean, that's currently our best pass rusher and would be a lot of he would be a very good pass rusher on a lot of teams in the NFL. It's not like a situation where it's like, oh, he's good for the Jets. He's good for a lot of teams right now. Henry Anderson's having himself a heck of a year. Darren Lee, first-round pick, friend of the podcast, is having a very nice junior campaign so far. One of the better linebackers in the NFL currently. How he's been playing at the beginning of this year. Obviously, there's still a lot of time left. And I think the addition of Avery Williamson in free agency, which I really love the signing, also brought in by Maccagnan, really helps them there. If you want to look back in the past as far as linebackers, Demario Davis being brought back in a trade for Calvin Pryor and a 7th-round pick, a bust of a safety. Because Mike Maccagnan got Adams in May. We didn't need Pryor anymore. He filled a hole that we had, got rid of a bust.
Kyle, I don't want not to cut you. We get what you're doing. You're running through all the positive stuff that he's done.
Okay.
But you don't think that, promoting somebody from in-house, it's not like the Jets are bringing in somebody from the outside. You're promoting.
I don't think Maccagnan needs to go.
I agree that I don't think it's as imperative that he goes but I could see the Jets potentially winning it. I could see the Jets being a playoff team with Maccagnan. The question is could the Jets be a Super Bowl team with Maccagnan?
I think they could.
Maccagnan is I'm trying to think of a quarterback that I can relate him to. Who's a good quarterback? Like, who's just a solid – my mom went to Ryan Tannehill. No, Matt Ryan, Matt Ryan's a B+. I would say Mike Maccagnan is like the Ryan Tannehill of GMs right now for me, in my mind. He has a lot of positive qualities, but can you see yourself winning a Super Bowl with him?
Yes.
And as I mentioned, these 5 years are so imperative that the Jets build around Sam Darnold to have a successful foundation so that they can go win Super Bowls. The goal can't be forever just to make the playoffs. That's fine if that's the goal for this year or even next year. But in 2020, 2021, 22, it has to be Super Bowl or bust type of way to look at it. And I don't know if Mike Maccagnan's that guy. You can't consistently miss on this many day 2 and day 3 guys. And look, I believe, and I'm not going to be angry if the Jets keep him because I agree that he's done a lot of positive things. I just think it's kind of a gamble. Do the Jets gamble and try to ride a wave that could potentially carry them to the Super Bowl by moving on from Maccagnan, going to a guy like Hermandinger, keeping in-house? So you're not getting away from what the Jets have done.
You're talking about. I'm sorry to cut you off. You're talking about taking a gamble, and yet you're telling me to put the future of my franchise in a guy whose biggest claim right now is an article from Brian Costello. Hermandinger is in line for a reason. He is where he's at for a reason right now. It is fantastic.
No, it's not just Brian Costello. A lot of who's not. What's his name? Not Ian Rappaport. Who did Scott Mason have on the pod? I can't remember his name. On the Play Like a Jet podcast, Scott Mason had who wrote the whole Albert Breer. Albert Breer and numerous other people have talked about how Hermandinger is kind of the golden egg behind the Jets front. A lot of their best moves have come from him, is what I'm saying. And look, we were as educated as most people when it comes to this, so we don't really know it. That's a decision that Chris Johnson has to make. Chris Johnson has to know, okay, how much has this guy been involved in our positive moves versus Maccagnan? Look, my point is we don't want to end up in the Marvin Lewis's of head coaches, the Ryan Tannehill of GMs. We don't want to end up in that situation where the Jets are, a wild card team every year. And look, I agree that Maccagnan has done a good job. I'd probably give him a B minus. And look, he's only been it for 4 years is 4 years, so he has his team at this point. But he can get better. This is the first time being a GM. He can get better, and the Jets theoretically could win a Super Bowl. But it's just about taking that risk, and it's a risk it's a big risk. I agree. It's more blatant and obvious that the Jets are not going to win a Super Bowl under Todd Bowles. So that's why I firmly believe they need to fire him. When they do that, the question does come up. Now that would be the time this offseason, if you fire Bowles, would be the time to let go of Maccagnan and promote a guy from in-house like Hermandinger who's going to be highly coveted. Whether it's this offseason or the next offseason. Do you make that move? And or do you not and potentially waste another year of Sam Darnold's development? Or, he gets better and you get better and you keep moving forward. I don't know. It was just a thought that I think, and it's a conversation that we're going to continue to have throughout the season as we see more and more of Maccagnan's picks and his free agent signings and whatnot play. I agree that he's probably done a B job. He's done a good job. He inherited a very bad team, and maybe he deserves some more time. But again, the clock is ticking in the sense that Sam Darnold, we're in year 1. We have 4 more years of him on this rookie deal. And not that you can't win after it, but You want to win while Sam's in his prime. But I will say that's the bonus of having a 21-year-old rookie. I mean, although he won't be on a rookie contract in 5 years, he'll at least still be relatively young. Whereas his other pick, Nathan Shepard, 5 years is going to be nearing retirement. All right. Let's go ahead and preview this week's matchup against the Jets and the Colts. Look, I think this could be a trap game for the Jets. Honestly, every game's a trap game, but this is a big game for the future of Todd Bowles and Mike McKagan. Can they, put 2 games back to back? Can they stitch together back-to-back wins and show that they're making progress? Or are they going to do what they did after week 1, where they get a big win, or what they've done really the entire Bowles tenure, get a huge win and fall flat the next week? We'll see. It's a big game. 50th anniversary. We're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the team that won the Super Bowl. Fun fact, the Jets will be wearing gray face masks, which I can already tell is going to be fire. So I'm excited about that. Yeah, because that's what the Jets wore in the Super Bowl. So they're wearing gray face masks and then the all whites, kind of to replicate the Super Bowl matchup. I think it'll look cool. All right, Kyle. An area to attack that the Jets really, it's the weakness of the Colts. Where should the Jets be looking when they're scheming in their game plans? Where should they be looking to attack the Colts?
Everywhere. I mean,
all right. Give me a specific position group.
Quarterback. Put Andrew Luck on his back, because that's the only reason the Colts will win this game. This is a pretty bad roster, but I think the biggest difference from these past games that the Jets have been playing, Matt Stafford, Blake Bortles, Case Keenum. Which quarterback am I missing? Ryan Tannehill. Yeah, Andrew Luck's the best. Mayfield. And Baker Mayfield. Andrew Luck is the best.
Also Tyrod Taylor. Sorry.
You done? Okay. All right. Andrew Luck is the best of all of them by far. Not even close. Andrew Luck, when healthy, is a top 10 quarterback. Any given week, he could be the best quarterback in the NFL. He's dangerous, but he is without T.Y. Hilton. He is without Jack Doyle. It sounds like Matt Slauson is not going to be able to play with the 2 broken vertebrae.
He's out for the year.
He's out. Okay. I figured – I didn't know. I honestly didn't know. They said he played the rest of that game. I was like, which vertebrae do you really need to play football? Who knows?
All of them.
Well, obviously not, Ben. I mean, he played without 2 of them, so.
Well, the article was titled, "I was 1 snap away from paralysis," so.
I mean, yeah. It sounds like you don't need them.
I guess so.
Yeah. But if you get Andrew Luck on his back, I really don't know who he's going to turn to. Eric Ebron had 3 touchdowns, I think, against the Patriots. And Eric Ebron has torched the Jets before, if I'm recalling. It was with the Lions. Well, it was the Lions, right? When's the last time he played? Oh, obviously 4 years ago. But was he on that team then?
Yeah, he was. He didn't torch us then. I think you're thinking of who was the Colts tight
Eric
end?
Swope, maybe?
No. You're thinking of the Colts. I think.
Dwayne Allen.
Yeah,
that's what I'm thinking.
For some reason, I think we both thought of that.
Okay.
Yeah, when the Jets got blown up by the Colts a few years ago, and he just
okay, that's what I'm thinking of. But different coaching staffs now for the Colts, same coaching staff for the Jets. I don't know if Casey Rogers is going to be coaching this game or not, but if he is, he better pay attention, because at least Andrew Luck remembers that game. I know Frank Reich and whoever their offensive coordinator is, I don't know off the top of my head, we'll probably be looking at that game, because there's a lot of similarities in the defenses that the Jets run, and obviously just a little better players now. So get Andrew Luck on his back, and I think that should seal the game for the Jets. This is not a good team. This is a really bad Indianapolis Colts team who has stuck in games because of Andrew Luck's brilliance. So get Andrew Luck on his back. Make sure Eric Ebron doesn't go ham on us, or leave him wide open. He'll probably drop it. And I guess Quentin Nelson, he's been playing pretty well as a rookie. I don't think Marlon Mack's going to be playing in this game, who I know was pretty good last year. I haven't heard a lot from him this year. He's been dealing with
they have Wilkins and Hines and whatnot. But, I agree with what you're saying. I mean, look, putting a quarterback in his back is really the key to winning most
any game. But more specifically
this
game.
There are anomalies, of course. I remember that Jets-Bengals Week 1 game a few years ago. The Jets had Jackson still lost. But yeah, I agree with that. I think shutting down the running attack is going to be the biggest thing because then it's just, Andrew Luck. Who's he going to throw to? He has no T.Y. Hilton. And then if you're taking away the running game, if they can't get anything, now Andrew Luck is facing second and third and longs. And who's he throwing to? Ryan Grant, Chester Rogers, and yes,
they sound deceptively fast.
Eric Ebron is a solid tight end and a guy that I actually kind of wanted the Jets to sign this offseason. But yeah, then you're just limiting his weapons. I think if the Colts can get a rhythm going, specifically in the ground game, if they can start gashing the Jets kind of up the middle, then that's when they can open up the playbook. Exactly what the Jets did the Broncos, open up the playbook, and it's not going to really matter who's on the receiving end of those passes. As you said, Ryan Grant is a fast receiver. If the Jets are getting gashed, they bring those safeties up. They play run defense. Ryan Grant gets behind, Darryl Roberts, and it's game over. So yeah, I think shutting down the running attack is going to be big. On offense for the Jets, it's going to be exactly the game plan that they have to. It's really stop the run and establish run. It's the key to most games is winning the battle in the trenches. But specifically, it opened so much up for this Jets offense. It was really an offense that we hadn't seen all season. I mean, I guess the Detroit game, but I could even argue that this game against the Broncos was even more of an accurate depiction of what this Jets offense can be. I mean, the running game just blew the doors open, and Darnold was really able to find time and go through his reads. Darnold is great under pressure, but boy, when you give him time, he shows that he can be a really special player. So those are the things that the Jets need to attack. And I guess also look out for. If as I mentioned, if the Jets are getting gashed on run defense, and if Sam Darnold's getting, or if Sam Darnold's again, like Andrew Luck, facing these second and third and longs, I don't know how this game's going to pan out for the Jets. But yeah, if the Jets can kind of dominate that, pin the Colts and long or second and third and longs and keep Darnold in first down, second and shorts, third and shorts, keep them in a rhythm, the Jets have a very good chance of winning this game. And look, I think that this is a very winnable game, but it's definitely an opponent that can't overlook. And as you said, Andrew Luck is by far the best quarterback the Jets have faced. He's still a very good quarterback, even though he's 29, and he definitely doesn't have the same shine and allure that he had a few years ago as being one of the NFL's premier quarterbacks. I think he still is. I think it's just the injury and the year off has definitely taken some of that away, but he's still a very good quarterback. And with every week, he's getting more and more back to the Andrew Luck that we saw. The Jets have to be careful in this game and in order to win this game. In order to improve to 3-3 is what I meant to say. As far as predictions go, Kyle, I want one bold prediction and then the score prediction.
Colts 17, Jets 10. Bold prediction. Andrew Luck 300 yards.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a much closer game than this past Sunday was, and I think it's going to be a tough game. I don't think it's going to be,
To clarify. Oh, they didn't get that last episode. Okay. I know I said this in the last episode that wasn't uploaded, but every time I pick the Jets to win, it doesn't go our way.
Well, you picked them to lose, and then they lost. So I don't know if I'm sorry, Kyle, but I don't know if your strategy.
Wink, wink. Shut up, Ben.
Well, you're now 1-2 with it, so good luck with that.
No, I'm 2-1.
Well, we didn't record an episode last week, so I guess I can't test that. Anyways,
boom. Got him.
Yeah, no, my bold prediction would be this. Yeah, I think that you're going to see I have to think of a bold
people
prediction.
Playing football.
I didn't think of a bold prediction.
You're the one who asked the question.
I am the one that, oftentimes I don't. I think the Jets are going to put up the most sacks that they've had this season. I think they're going to really thrash Andrew Luck. I think they're going to get your key to the game. That would be what I'd say. I think Bowles is going to get very creative with his blitz packages, and you're going to see guys, Copeland, Luvu, Tachu. Oh, my God, I always butcher his name. What is it?
Jeremy Tachu.
Oh, I got it right. Never mind. So it sounded wrong when I said it. Tachu, Leonard Williams. I think you're just going to see all-out havoc for the Jets' front seven. And I think that's the Jets' key to victory in that sense. And I think the Jets will pull this game out. But it's going to be a squeaker. I don't think it's going to be the wide margin of victory that we saw in week 1 or this past week. It's going to be a very close back and forth type of game. average scoring. I think it'll be in the 20s, maybe a 24-21 type finish where the Jets get a last-second field goal. But I think it'll be a defining game for Sam Darnold early in his career. Time to face some just to face some adversity and to come back, and to beat a team that what I'm trying to say is essentially this. I mean, in his 2 victories, it's been pretty easy for most of it. I mean, obviously he responded to the adversity in the sense that he threw a pick 6 on his first drive, or the Jets were down 7-0 in this game or whatnot. But I'm talking about true adversity in the sense that the Jets are down 10 points heading into halftime, and they come back, they make some adjustments, they get some momentum going, and he leads, last second, scoring drive. That type of adversity. I think it's going to be a defining moment early for Sam Darnold's career. That's my prediction on this game. All right. That's where we'll wrap it up.
Want to hear something funny?
Sure. Go ahead. I heard you snicker. I didn't know what it was about.
Yeah.
I decided that shouldn't stop for it.
Yeah. Lenny Dykstra just got indicted by a grand jury on multiple charges, including possession of methamphetamine, as well as making terroristic threats. Yeah. He faces up to 5 years in prison.
Who?
Lenny Dykstra.
Why can I not picture who you're talking about?
Oh, boy. Yeah, because you're not cultured. All right.
Oh, the baseball player.
Yeah. There you go.
It took a while. I'm sorry.
Are you?
Am I sorry? No, I'm not actually sorry. You're right.
Yeah.
I was trying to put – I was like, who are you talking about? All right. Well, that was a great note to end our podcast on. You can follow us at The Jet Take on Twitter if you'd like to interact with Kyle and I. We tweet a lot of Jets stuff, and we know that if you're listening to the show, you're probably a Jets fan. You can also follow our show or listen to our show wherever you listen to podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, wherever. Just search up The Jet Take. And, of course, to find the best Jets content out there, bar none. It's not even close at this point. TurnOnTheJets.com is your best place to go to. Kyle Fahey, any last thoughts? We don't have a soundbite, so you're not going to do your usual.
Oh, man. I usually get like 10 seconds to think about this during the soundbite. Am I just going to do my last words now?
Well, sure. I mean, it's not going to be as weird. Just last thoughts, but make them somewhat Jets related this time.
Oh.
I don't want to have to rap on something that's just weird. All right, he doesn't have anything.
No hurricane can take us down. Go Florida.
Wow. Nice job, Kyle. All right, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Jet Take. We will, be live next week. I was trying to think. Normally, I say we'll leave you with the best chant in the National Football League.
League.
Do that.
Yeah.
Without the sound bites, I'm definitely helpless. Definitely
I got you. I got you.
I'm assistant.
J-E-T-S. Jets.
That was terrible. But anyways, hopefully the Jets win this Sunday. Big game coming up this Sunday. Definitely tune in if you're in the area. Try to go to this game. Give the Jets a home field advantage. Again, celebrating the 50-year anniversary of the Super Bowl. Kind of a big occasion. Fun game to go to. Should be a nice, fun game. And we'll be live next Wednesday with callers, 8 o'clock Eastern time. You can call in. Number is 1-515-739-1285. The PIN is 261-860 with the pound or hash sign. We will talk to you guys next week. I promise this will get uploaded. And Kyle, don't die.